You're listening to the She Lift Project podcast, a show dedicated to helping women achieve higher levels of success in the workplace. No matter where you are in your career, we want to help you grow. Now here's your host, Cynthia Kirkpatrick, a CPA, CFP, and Senior Financial Advisor at Moneta Group.
Welcome to another episode of the She Lift Project podcast. I'm Cynthia Kirkpatrick and excited to have Krystal Weigl here today. When I was figuring out how we're going to introduce you, because there's so much we could talk about, I did a little research, and it says, mission is to make the law more approachable, accessible, and useful for those it's meant to protect. Wow, we're going to dive into that. Attorney, author, advocate, wellness enthusiast. You're a mom of two. You started your own law firm. So let's say mom of three, because that's your baby too. We're going to talk about that. But your team is championing the pursuit of justice for our community. I could keep going on, but I'm going to stop right there because you are a lawyer and you have lots of kinds of law that you're involved in. Take it from there.
Okay. Yes.
Describe yourself.
Thank you.
What you guys do.
Good morning. Thank
you.
Yeah, okay, so I've been really fortunate. I've been in law for more than half my life now. I've been practicing for 12 years. Started my firm 3 years ago, coming up here in January. And the entire time it's just been this almost experiment of how do I show up here? How do I, I've wanted to be an attorney since I was 4 years old. I told everybody that back in preschool. And so thinking through, why does this matter and how do I go here for what I think this is supposed to be, kind of ties all of that together. Just a matter of how do I show up? How do I do this job? How do I make this be what I think it is supposed to be? And I think the law is supposed to protect people, although it does occasionally fall short. So my passion is figuring out how it could do that better.
That's pretty heavy, all in all.
For a Monday morning.
Right. I think life in general. And to say, 12 years in law, which for many people, I think in law, that's still pretty, quote unquote, probably early on. And
Absolutely.
You're already tackling or trying to aspire to these really heavy things.
Yeah. Well, I've been thinking about it for a long time, and I started law clerking when I was 18. So I've been, like I said, I've been consistently in a legal practice or a corporate litigation department or at a law firm for more than half my life. And these are things that I do think deeply about and care deeply about and have had a front row to the way that this can work and the reasons why it sometimes doesn't do what it's meant to do. It's an extremely enjoyable career, although it it takes so much lifting. It takes a ton of effort, kind of on a daily basis.
And we'll definitely get to that because, as we mentioned, you're a mom of two, and life can be challenging in general. But with a law firm, and I think of lawyers in general, there's so many different types of law and ways you can practice. And your law firm adding attorneys, you just added a partner.
Mm-hmm.
What are all the different, if you were to go out there and explain or describe your firm, now Weigl Jackson, right?
Yeah. We're rolling out the rebrand, but yes, very much Weigl Jackson.
How would you explain it?
For a while, like when we went out at the very beginning, the tagline jokingly and not anywhere on the internet was not your father's law firm. And now I say it less jokingly because it fits. The space that I go back to professionally all the time is we represent good people and we represent good causes. So I've been fortunate that I have worked in litigation my whole career, which means we try cases. We are actively practicing law. We're not a firm that, utilizes templates or goes through and does boilerplate paperwork. It's very much we are creative with what we do. We are intentional. We're purposeful. I think it's very much the way that I've heard you describe your interest and role in the financial industry is that, the person here is what really matters, and we're going to build what we do around that. And so we end up in all sorts of weird spaces. we have seen a lot of different unique challenges, problems that people face, and been fortunate to have the energy and the time and the skill and the experience to really craft legal solutions around that. So what do? We represent, we take a lot of civil rights cases, work in the employment law space. We represent business owners. And over the last several years, we've ended up with more and more construction litigation. My siblings and I, we all work together. We grew up in a HVAC business that my grandpa started here in St. Louis. So a lot of time in small family businesses and a lot of time around the trades. So all of those things have come together in this very unexpected, very cool, funky kind of way.
Well, it's when you mentioned not your father's
law firm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. It started because I was joking. I said it as a joke a couple of times, like saying, we're not going to do it that way because this isn't your dad's law firm. And I think the point was there are so many ways that are outdated and antiquated, and they just don't really fit with the current economy. They don't fit with a lot of, female business owners that I've represented over the years. This idea that there's sort of a manufacturing process to law. Like, we're going to take in a problem, we're going to put it through the assembly line that we know because this is about us and our practices and our firm and the way it's always been done. And then we're going to get this result that somehow is best for the person who brought us that problem. And it doesn't really work that way, right? It's like, okay, so we meet with someone, they tell us about what they're dealing with, and we go, okay, here are some things that we've had experience with. Here's some questions that I have now. Here's some things I need to look into. And these are the people that I think we should kind of get on the bench here to deal with this unique situation that really reflects the experience that this person is having. Because that's not really the business model, right? The business model is there. The speeding ticket practice, the volume work, the personal injury, massive firm, corporate defense, those firms have set business models, and they go, this is how we hit our KPIs regardless of who's bringing us that business. That isn't really how I like to lawyer. It, like I said, there's a world of difference between being a good business owner versus being a good lawyer. Sometimes they cross over, but not as much as maybe people act like they do. So we try to do stuff where it's for the person who's coming in, right? And I am not so inflexible that I think that every problem has a one-size solution that I already know before I even meet the person who's carrying it.
Is there a time that stood out to you where, maybe it's even the first time where you're like, oh, I'm going to have to deal with this differently. That old way is not going to work here.
Oh, God, constantly. It's so constant. I think what I have seen so often, and I could give so many examples, but a lot of what we do is confidential, and a lot of the people that I work with are also here in St. Louis. So, when I can feel and I can picture the times that I have been in the conference room where the very overwhelmed, very intimidated person comes in and they sit down and they talk to an older partner who more often than not is male, and they are withholding with the information that they have because there's not a certain amount of trust built up, because they feel stupid, they feel ashamed, they feel embarrassed that they even have to ask these questions. And there's sort of a patronizing, somewhat of a demeaning attitude about it, where it's so clear to me and to the client that what they're experiencing right now really isn't the issue that that partner is focused on. The partner is focused on, I'm going to get this business, I'm going to do what I always do, I'm going to get a result somewhere in this dollar range, and then I'm going to make this much money, and then I'm going golfing. And it's really problematic. It's really problematic because your clients can't be honest with you, which is absolutely critical. You find out things about the case later on that you could have learned earlier and might have kept some of the egg off your face. You learn things. You don't learn what you need to know, and that person goes through it scared, and a lot of the issues are like re-traumatizing to them. The experience of going through the legal process is supposed to be about seeking justice. It's supposed to be about feeling that your community has a valid sense of right and wrong, and that you'll be protected by that. And more often than not, what's going on is people go through it and they're just as scared and almost re-traumatized by the experience of going to seek justice as they were when the injustice happened in the first place. And that's bad for everybody.
So my first thought, or part of my thoughts there, were could be better for business if you just go in, you get the answers, you get done, and you get golf, and you get the money, and you're done, right? However, you mentioned there could be egg on the face later on, or you may not get all the answers that you need, so that could be bad for business. And in the end, there's just this maybe feeling it may not be best for business, and there's more to law.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, what's the point, right? Like, I do regularly think, and I share with people who ask about going to law school or who are early to the practice, if you're here to make a lot of money, and that is the main priority, there's a couple ways to do it. Those are great career paths that a lot of people take. You can go into corporate defense. You can work for an insurance company. You will have a decent amount of money, and you will have an outrageously demanding schedule. You know, I did my time in corporate defense. My partner, Luke Jackson, he did his time in corporate defense. He lasted longer than I did. He was also in the Air Force, so he was kind of made for it. But if the goal is, I'm going to come here and I'm going to make a lot of money, you're going to be sadly disappointed, because this is a lot more meaningful and a lot more fun and a lot more valuable than how do I just make sure that I'm getting a big paycheck. And if you're interested in the things that are more valuable, like advocacy, keeping the community accountable, holding some of these, Goliaths to the promises that they make every time they take money from folks, then this can be an outrageously satisfying career. It can be the kind of profession where you literally go to work every day and you get pretty hyped about the opportunity to speak for somebody else. I mean, I think it's an incredible, incredible opportunity. And it's also like this really, really, really enjoyable experience. Somebody to come to you and say, here's some really bad stuff that I'm dealing with, and this is taking up so much of my life and so much of my brain space. Can you help? And to be able to say yes and then do it.
It sounds like something you have been meant to do. And you mentioned early on, like, I knew since I was 4. How in the world, I mean, I think back to when I was 4, what was I doing? I definitely didn't know I wanted to do what I'm doing now. I mean, it all makes sense. But, 4, I'm thinking Krystal, probably curly pigtails. I don't know. How did you know at 4 that you wanted to be an attorney?
Yeah. Yes. And now I have a 4-year-old daughter. My daughter hit 4 last month, and in almost every which way imaginable, I'm watching what I was at that age. So
are you breeding her to be one of your attorneys one day?
Oh God, no. And even if I tried, she's already so strong-willed, there's no. But it is. She told me, she was like, Mom, I want to be a lawyer. And I was like, amazing, perfect. You'd be so good at this. But yeah, I tell, like when we get ready in the morning, Charlie, her name's Charlotte. Charlie will ask me, she'll go, why do you have to go to work? And she really, at that age, they love repetition. They love like asking the same question, hearing that same response. They'll ask you the same question 14 times to make sure you're sure. So she asked me in the morning, and she's not a morning person. She comes by that honestly too. She'll say, why do you have to go to work? Why do I have to go to school? I want to stay home. I want you to stay home. And I'll tell her, I go, well, Charlie, I go to work to make sure that people play fair. That's it. That's why I go to work. Make sure that people are fair, that people are following the rules, and that everybody gets treated fairly, even after something bad happens. I'll tell you, you got to go to school because it's good for your head and it's good for your heart. I got to go to work because your school costs a lot of money. That has become the reality now. But yeah, I tell her that every time. And now she's started saying, she's like, well, I want to make sure that people play fair. I want to make sure that people get treated fair. I'm like, perfect. There's a lot of ways to do that. One way that I know is being a lawyer. And so I think I had a really, really early understanding of that, even as a kid. So I was always headed in this direction. I was always excited to do this. And that kind of contributed to me moving around to a bunch of different firms. In part, it was like I don't mind the conflict. I don't mind it at all. There's certain kinds of conflict that need to happen for things to improve, right? It's absolutely necessary. Can't really have just like a unconflicted, peaceful state and then everything's just fine. We don't live that way. It's not real. But for things to get better, there's a certain amount of friction that has to happen. And the kind of conflict that I can't deal with is sort of the in-house internal conflict, the misalignment of values around how are we going to work together? What are we working towards? How do we help each other and support each other in achieving that internally? I don't think that you can provide a service externally to any client if the internal pieces aren't really taken care of. I don't think you can show up for your team correctly if those internal pieces aren't in place for yourself. So I had this very, very idealistic idealistic concept of like, this is what being a lawyer would look like, feel like, this is how I could approach it. This is what would feel good to me. And, for better or for worse, I spent my last year of law school in Georgetown, worked in DC. I was with the American Bar Association on the Human Rights Council. And that was right before I graduated and then shortly after I graduated law school. And the Human Rights Council at that time was led by Sandra Day O'Connor. We spent time at the Supreme Court. It was a different administration, a different time, a different economy. And to me, it felt like a movie all the time. Like I grew up here in South County in St. Louis. That was a world I'd never seen before. And then it set me up to be a little disappointed with what practicing law actually looked like. So I left DC and I went to Chicago, and that's where I started litigating. And I was at the Daly Center in the courthouse there in Cook County 4, sometimes 5 days a week. Absolute chaos. Our office was on Michigan Avenue at the time. Busy stuff and grueling, grinding work with no internal support. And so I moved back to St. Louis about 10 years ago now. And it was a long time before that got better. Partially it was because I was so young. I didn't even know how to ask for the support that I needed. I didn't know any lawyers growing up. The first time that I started working closely with lawyers was when I started this internship, this law clerking role at State Farm Corporate when I was 18. And I was in the corporate litigation department there. And I I remember like meticulously watching the women around me, and there weren't that many, but watching them, what do I wear? What do I say? How do I sit? What do I act like? How do we go out for drinks together? Like what? Not at 18, but soon after, like, what do you do? How do you behave? And I was like, then I was just learning, studying the work, but also studying how am I supposed to sound like I have been here before? Because of course I hadn't.
Right.
So I think, the idea that I wanted to be a lawyer, it was there immediately with this kind of just sense that people are supposed to be treated fairly, and that maybe that's the most important thing I could possibly do is work on that. And I still think that.
So the experience in DC was this almost inspiring, I can't sing, but
I've arrived.
Right. A moment of we can make real change. This is how we work together. And then going into sort of, I guess, what we would think of when we watch it on TV, that grueling, grinding, go into the courtroom, pound our.
Oh God, yeah. Yes, yeah. That is, it's funny. Okay, so for example, we hosted, when I was in DC, one of the projects I worked on, we hosted Madam Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. At that time, they were working on prosecuting war crimes against, I think it was General Kenyatta at the time. And so we hosted her at Jones Day Law Firm, massive international firm. They have a huge presence in DC. Everything is shiny, everything is pretty, everything is well decorated. Everybody looked like the most imminent of professionals, right? So we did that. And then about a year later, I was coming back from the courthouse. I'm working in Chicago, and I'm carrying file folders like this big, and you can't drive down there. So I'm like, this was a little bit before Uber, so I'm like going to grab a cab, carrying all this stuff. I've got like my skirt suit on. It's raining. I got out of a cab. I heard my entire hem rip on Michigan Avenue, right outside of the Gap, which was across the street from my office on the lakeside. And going back to my office, I'd been working all day. My shoes are wet. Like I had no clue how to make things easier for myself at that time. And then I get back in, and of course my boss is instantly just like, why did that take so long? You have this memo that's got to get out. We have briefing we have to finish, and I'm running late for 10 other things at the time. And it was this night and day experience of what is this supposed to be, and how am I supposed to be if I'm going to be here doing things that I think are important that I want to do. There's so many different, when I think back over the last dozen years of the experiences that I've had, so much of it is finding myself in these rooms where I'm just going, why are we being mean here? And why is there not more collaboration? Why are we not supporting each other through this? Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not new to this. I know that litigation is adversarial, right? But when you talk about like we're pounding the table, we're pounding our fists on these things, it's in a courtroom where we're arguing about something, right? I expected that. And that's happened twice already this past week. Just on Friday, actually. The guys can get away with it. We're not allowed to raise our voices quite like that in the courtroom. But we going into a system that can be hostile, and like I said, conflict, of course, that's going to happen. That's fine. That's sometimes how we get to the truth, right? There's a reason for some of this pressure. But the dismissive, unsupportive behavior by the people that are meant to be on your team, the weaponizing of accountability, the why aren't you doing more, why isn't that done already, as opposed to, is there something that might help you get this work out? Is there something that you would need to hit XYZ deadline? So those are questions I was never asked. And it took almost a decade of actually practicing law underneath somebody else, grinding it out, making a lot of money for other people, to go, okay, I have seen enough of the stuff that does not work, that does not support me, that I feel just as dismissed as the client does here, for me to think, I can do this differently. I would like to do this a little bit differently. I usually find myself relating so much more to the client that's at the table than I ever have to the partner that's been at the table with me. And I could go through like 10 different people in my mind of like, there was no connection. We did not. I remember, okay, so law school, walking back from the courthouse, I was walking back with a criminal defense attorney. I got to kind of clerk through this trial, watching a murder trial, and we're walking back, and there's so many vivid moments of that trial that stick out to me. I thought the attorney did a great job, and his client was found not guilty, which I thought was the right result. I think that's what was supposed to happen. It was a self-defense case, and I believed the guy, and the jury did too. I was in Syracuse, New York, and I said, man, you did a great job. That was so cool. How exciting. What a great result. And I still am as starry-eyed as I was back then most of the time. And he hadn't been at it that long. Like, this guy was probably around 40, And so he said, we're walking back, and I said, wow, that must feel really good. That's so exciting. What a cool result. And he said, yeah, I guess. And I was like, hey, God is not guilty. That's a big deal. Like, great, right? Like, this is what we wanted. This is cool. And we started talking on the walk back, and the conversation turned to, it's not that hard to not be accused of a crime. It's not that hard to not get arrested. And this is this man telling me like why he doesn't really care about the work that he does, or even the great jury result he had just gotten. And he said, how many times have you been arrested? And the answer at that time was none. And that was his point. He was like, just don't do crimes. And I was like, this is a criminal defense attorney. This is a guy who makes money off of people being, accused of crimes. And you've got this like defeatist, just dismissive, ugly attitude about it. And I've seen that play out, a dozen times, of just like, who cares? This doesn't matter. This isn't important. In the criminal world and the civil world, right? And in the way that I hear, there's nothing that's more off-putting to me than an attorney who's basically just talking shit about their client. Just going, like, you came here with that problem? Yeah, pay me and I'll fix it, but it wasn't that hard for you not to have that problem. It's ugly, and it's kind of the reality of the demographic of the people who get to be attorneys. And I've just seen it so frequently that it's the first thing that I kind of look for when I want to work with somebody, because I'm always like, I could see how that could happen. I could see how you could get yourself in trouble. I could see how you could accidentally blow a bunch of money and need to go for bankruptcy. All of these things are grown up seeing these things. So it's very different. I have a different perspective on the dismissiveness and the entitlement of people who go work hard, make a lot of money, the end.
Yeah, weird things, bad things, unfortunate things can happen to great people. It struck me when you were talking about, I think it's sort of threads that you've talked about, where the internal should match the external. How the internal of an organization or a team how they treat the internal should match how they treat the external. And your experience of when it didn't, it took a while to say, wait a minute, it doesn't have to be that way. I don't have to be treated that way. I don't have to live with this. It's not right. I should go elsewhere. I deserve more. These people are making a lot of money, and doing all this work, which I think is interesting. And I think many, many people go through that. What also struck me when we were talking about that was so many of us don't know that we can or should or how to ask for help. So it's almost this perfect storm of the leaders in the culture aren't going to ask you what you need. It's that, I forget how you put it, but that negative accountability. And then as the person, we don't know that we can or how or should ask for help. It's a perfect storm for unhappiness, bad culture. And I'd probably say, the client or the person not getting the best that they should. I mean, what do we do?
Oh, what a good question.
Solve it all right now.
Okay, let's do it. We can do this. Coffee's kicking in. Okay, so I love, you said it better than I did. Negative accountability, like weaponizing accountability,
there
right?
You go.
Like that's what I was trying to get at. Is it's like there are a lot of things that I love the question. This is so good. There's a lot of things that I think like maybe this has this very negative brand, and this thing has this very positive brand, right? And those things need to be flip-flopped. So, for example, the idea of like one of the things that I love, gossip. Like, for the love of God, please gossip more. Gossip all day, every day. Talk about all the things that are going on. Share them with your sisters. Share them with your friends. Share them with your family. Gossip is like it's a way to protect people. The origin of that word is like God-sib, which is a reference to women sitting around and primarily women sharing really intimate details of their lives, which is what I think gossip always is. So there's that. And then there's complaining, right? Like, please complain more. Please just do more complaining about things that don't work, because the fact that those things have been branded as this ugly, bad thing where, like, these nice Midwestern ladies just aren't smiling enough. We could do less of that anyways, but like talk about the stuff that doesn't work and talk about why it doesn't work for you, because I can guarantee like it's not going to work for somebody else. And it's like, it's all of these activities that we used to do people used to do to connect and to identify problems and to work on those problems are kind of branded as like a chatty Kathy or negative Nancy, Debbie Downer. Oh, those all just popped up in my head right at the same time.
And those are all female names,
right?
That you said.
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, I haven't heard of a chatty Charlie ever. But there's like, it's just, yes, because we're in systems that don't necessarily support the life experiences that a lot of us have. And then conversely, these things that get like a really positive rap, like just grind it out, just tough it out, just get your work done, be accountable, be always on, take any of those corporate buzzwords that weren't designed for a lot of people, but certainly weren't designed for women or mothers, weren't designed for me. That's for sure. Maybe flip some of that and say, like, yeah, these targets are great, and I'm very excited about our KPIs and our quotas and the way that we're going to hit them. But those are a natural result of us doing some of these other things to make sure that we are internally satisfied and getting the kind of support that we need.
That makes so much sense. Pouring into the right stuff from the beginning is going to get you there to the outcomes, and the KPIs and all of those things are the outcomes. And I've seen it time and time again, right? If you focus on the grind and I don't know, just exhausting people and killing them and hitting them upside the head time and time again of why aren't you there? Why aren't you doing that? Versus what do you need? How can we support you?
Yes. Oh my God. And I know because we've shared some of these ideas before, and like it's selfish, right? Like, be selfless, don't be selfish. And it's like, okay, where am I at in that? Where's me, because, and this is why I think it's so important, right? It all goes back to like representation. So for example, I am not a financial person. I don't know a lot about it. I know tax law to a certain extent, and I don't practice it because there's a lot there. I know enough to be dangerous, and that's it. So I can imagine, and I've experienced this myself. I can imagine coming into a beautiful place like Minetta, right? Well decorated. Everybody looks fabulous. You all look like you've been like born and raised in this place, and you know what's going on, and you know how to do this, and you talk the talk and walk the walk and look the look and all those things. That's great, right? That's what we're supposed to do. But I've had these conversations plenty of times where I've been like, I am not about to share what I don't know. I am not about to ask the questions that I don't know how to ask because I don't have language for it. It's embarrassing. It's intimidating. I'm supposed to know stuff, right? I'm a smart, well-educated, capable young woman, right? That's the brand. That's so important. But if I say, what about this, or how do I do this, or I'm not sure how to do this, I'll give you an example. I remember, okay, so my husband and I, we have invested in real estate for a long time. And we did it by accident at first, and then we got a little more purposeful about it. We bought what I will loosely call a house in Logan Square in Chicago. Right after law school, I was like 24. Andy was 25. And this was it needed an entire gut rehab, right? Renovation. We lived there for 6 months without hot water in the place. We didn't have, we had like space heaters during March in Chicago, like just awful stuff. Really challenging, but we were young. We were excited. We were like, yes, we're like, at this point, we are so committed to this bad decision we made. Like we still have that house. We redid it as a 3-unit house, and it's been good to us, right? But it was like an overnight success after 12 years. And I remember at that time looking up and trying to figure out what happens if one of us dies while we have this house, because we weren't married. Andy and I got married for our 10th anniversary. Like that wasn't really the path for a while. And so I eventually stumbled upon, okay, you got to get life insurance. Like that would be an important thing to have, because if one of you goes and you can't make the mortgage payments on this place, which we couldn't, we barely could even when we were both alive, right? And so I thought, okay, we need to get life insurance. So I talked to somebody at a financial advisory firm, not Minetta, and
there's other places than Minetta. What?
Yeah, don't go, don't do it. So I talked to somebody there, and I'd known this man a long time. And I was chatting with him, and he basically, what he told me was, I don't need to get life insurance. I'm too young. There's no reason for it. And if I do, Andy, my now husband, will just spend it on his new girlfriend after I die. And it was dismissive. It was rude. It's a little demeaning. His, what do they call them? I think I'm client relationship manager. I think that was the role. This woman that I'd also known most of my life was sitting there, and we were over the phone, but she interjected a few times just to be like, Krystal, that's not your fault. That's not a silly question. That's not, giving me basically what the support that I needed to even engage in the conversation, because it was so dismissive. And I was like, I don't feel like you even asked me enough questions to know what I'm asking you. You didn't engage with me in any way. You hopped on a call as a favor to somebody else and then told me what I was asking for was silly. And it was so frustrating. And so the number of times that I've found myself feeling exactly like the clients who come in to meet with lawyers, who a lot of times have never interacted with lawyers ever before and have this silly idea of what we look like, sound like, and do. And then just slowing down enough, like taking enough time to go, there was no reason in the world why you should have known this. Like I work through these problems every single day. I went to school for 7 years. For 7 years, just to sit for a test to find out whether or not I could tell you about this stuff, And so that vibe, that father's style of law firm, No disrespect to dads. I know several great dads. But they have a certain level of confidence that essentially guarantees them, and I'm talking specifically about the people that I've worked with, not just fully generalizing every guy that I've ever met. There's a certain level of confidence that the partners that I worked for had, and that was great when we needed them to have it in the courtroom, because you gotta be a warrior in there, right? Like that, you do. You gotta be a little bit naive and a little bit optimistic about things that you have no way to predict. But then when you go back in the conference room and you're sitting down with a client and you're so confident about everything that you've known and you've done and you've experienced that you don't even need to know who they are or what they've experienced or what they're dealing with, the client just sits there feeling stupid. And it's like, who does this help? Who is this helping?
And I think whether you're a client somewhere or, an employee somewhere, I think that really gets back to, if it doesn't feel right, if it's not what you need, you're not crazy, you're not stupid.
Yeah.
Go to where you get what you deserve and you need. A little snap in there on the side.
Write that down.
And it just hit me, because I think as you're working in your career, right, that has such an impact on your long-term success, the trajectory, exponentially how successful you are. But also, and I know you're big into this, wellness, your mental well-being, your financial, your physical is really where I meant to go, your physical well-being, and that of who you are to those around you as an employee, and then as a client, or, going anywhere. Just that, right? I think the buzzwords, right? To feel seen and heard and validated. And what I do, everything you were saying there, it's like, I'm a very intelligent person. I could never practice law. I'm sure half of the buzzwords you say, I would never know. I'd be looking up. I mean, you're even talking probably Latin, and it came from, gossip comes from Godspeed or whatever. I'm like, okay. I would never know that. But I agree. I mean, so much of what we do is asking questions, understanding what's the emotion behind it, underneath it. And until then, we can't get to it. But I couldn't go into a hospital and do what they do.
No way.
And why ever should we expect them to come into our office and do what we can do? Never.
Yeah. And also, like, just the validation of, don't feel like you were supposed to. Don't
right.
feel, don't have this attitude about it, and yeah, absolutely. They know that, people feel that way all the time. And that intimidation, that kind of haughtiness over it. It's also, I mean, there's not, statistically speaking, there are not a ton of people. If you have a professional license, you are in a deep minority. Just blanket statement. If you have a professional license, you are among the minority of the population. You're in a specialized field. You've studied to be there. You practice to be there. You research. I mean, I research things that I do on a regular basis constantly, because these things change all the time, right? And so, the idea that I would have an attitude, or, as my grandma always says, like, be highfalutin about the fact that somebody's coming in to ask you questions. Like, it's just silly. It's silly stuff. And it's being able to sit there and just go, like, yeah, absolutely, I hear you and I see you. And it's a messed up situation, and I could have found myself there too. It's a very, that's a different conversation than the way that I was raised to practice.
I keep thinking in my head, you said earlier, conflict. And most people, they even hear the word and they stiffen up and get dysregulated, uncomfortable. And you're like, I like conflict. You're leaning right into it. And I agree with you that a certain level of conflict is actually how we get better, how we grow through it and improve. However, I think for so much of our lives, we're taught to avoid it at all costs. And so we don't know how to deal with it.
Sure.
How do you then, what is it in you that you're like, yeah, I like it, let's go, come on?
I don't think I would say I like it. I don't mind it. I think it's necessary, right? And also, but I have the honor and the privilege of engaging in conflict in order to speak for somebody else. That's easier. That's an easier thing to do. It's significantly more difficult if you don't have that support, right? If I have to go in and I have to do this so consistently, have a conflict that is my own, right? So let's say you have a client who's upset about something. Believe it or not, that has happened.
It does.
They're upset, right? And most of the time they're upset about things you have no control over. They're upset because they were mad when they got here and they wanted the problem solved before they met you. That will happen, right? And what I have to tell them is I have to say, this is how I practice law. This is me. This is what my team does. This is how we communicate. This is how frequently we send updates. This is when I'm available, because it is not all the time. And I tell them always, I say, that's what this is about, working with me. You can find another attorney. That's okay. I will not have any hard feelings about this. I will be here to support you in the future if that's what you need. But it's so much like picking your battles, right? Like which things am I going to draw a line in the sand about? Which things am I going to even give the energy to explaining? Because there are times where I'm just going, your asks are so unreasonable, or they are so misplaced, or the demands that you're making are things that I could never. Easy example with these things. Nobody has any clue what their case is worth. Ever. I have a civil rights client I spoke with last week, and I was giving her some options, saying we can handle these things this way or these things this way. And she chose none of those options, of course, and came up with her own. And she said, well, if we don't have like a 6-figure settlement by the end of the year, then I guess we're going to have to go to trial. We met about 2 months ago, and so of the many, many misconceptions that this person had, highly educated person, by the way, of the many misconceptions that she had, we had to sit down and talk about, that is not a reasonable result. If that's not something you should expect. And in fact, I wouldn't even get to those levels until so many other things happened, and we don't even know if they will happen. So I constantly have to tell people, like, hey, I'm excited to work with you. I like this. I like this case. I like representing you. Thank you for trusting me with this. We're going to walk this path together. And every time a new thing comes up where it's like, hey, that wasn't reasonable, this isn't how this is going to work, I got to say it again. And that's okay. So as far as the conflict stuff, I consider it like a badge of honor to be able to go into a courtroom or into a boardroom or into a deposition and speak up for somebody who doesn't have the language to do it for themselves. My dad's parents came over here from Germany, and they didn't speak English when they got here. And I knew them much later in their lives, right? They came over to the States in 1956. But cultural and language barriers are something that I saw front row often. And so this idea of like, I got to be the translator for them into this space, this legal space where we artistically get to design and create a fair solution that will undo some serious injustice that happened before I got here. That to me, it's like, yeah, I'll fight about that all day. Let's do it. It's different when I have to speak up for myself.
Yeah, they often, I've heard books and things, right, where it's easier to treat others more kindly.
Oh, sure.
Stand up for others more easily than it is for yourself. It's easier to love others better than it is to love yourself. And it's just, I get it because I do that. It's just hard to wrap the brain around all that.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of conditioning that comes with that, right? There's a lot, there's a lot of selflessness. I mean, that's you describe somebody as being so selfless. That's supposed to be a compliment. It's like, there's a certain amount of training that we get around your value is how well you take care of other people. You're valuable in that you pour into other people. And it's kind of silly. Like, yeah, I mean, maybe there was some value there before that, and I'm not sure. And there's so many different factors that play into all of that. And this caretaking role of, as long as I am taking care of everybody else, regardless of the cost, I've got some new innate value to me. Kind of yucky.
We almost lean in with kids too hard into the selflessness, give to others, don't focus on just yourself. And I think, especially with women, and I was just in a group setting where somebody had talked about that they help a lot of women move further in the world. And they said what surprised them the most was that the women struggle with self-worth. That if they, anything else, any other resource that they gave to the woman, it didn't really matter if they couldn't break through that barrier of self-worth.
Oh, God, yeah. And I feel like I have this montage that plays in my head sometimes. Definitely when there's like a lot of self-doubt going on, when I'm doing something I don't know how to do or I haven't done it before. This idea of, okay, it's like language that I just kind of grew up hearing, criticisms of adult women around me. You spend too much time on yourself. You don't spend enough time on yourself. You let yourself go. You're wearing enough makeup. You're not wearing enough makeup. That's too much. You name it. It's like that. There's not a great way that I'm familiar with, a widely accepted way to show up as a woman. And that's like, what are you supposed to do with that? Except for, this is how I want to show up, and that's more than enough. Like, what else, what other metric would you look at? Because, we could pull up social media right now, and, or pull up the New York Times or Washington Post, any of it. And it's so critical so constantly. And I haven't found like what the balance is with all of that. And God, when I was learning how to do jury trials, boy, where to even begin with that? I met Jan Felina is one of the first jury trial high-powered attorneys that I got to meet when I was in law school. She prosecuted the Mark Cuban case, I believe. She did, yeah. And back when, and she lost, and that's why she talked about that trial, I think, to our group. She was a Syracuse alumni, so go Orange. And I remember her talking about, when they were training to do that trial, there was something about whether or not she could wear her wedding ring in front of the jury, and if her wedding ring was appropriate, or if she should get a pretend one, or if she should take it off altogether. And when that was one of the earlier versions of that I had learned. But when I was coming up through the ranks too, it's always about my voice, like the voice coaching. That's too deep. That's too light. That's too high pitched. That's too deep. That's not loud enough. Now you sound intimidating. Now that's aggressive. From not just from one person either. I mean, for years around different coaches that I had different partners that I had worked under. And it's still, when I'm going to do something like this where I know my own voice is recorded, universally people don't like the sound of their own voice, right? That's like a really easy example to look at. Nobody likes the way their own voice sounds. I think it's just like biologically it sounds different to us than what we think it is. But I tell you what, if you sit there and somebody's like, for years, like you're having someone pick apart whether your voice is going to be likable and acceptable to a group of 12, sometimes 14 strangers in a jury box, that'll leave an impression. It's like, well, I mean, my job is to speak, right? So what do you do with that information? Except for find yourself over policing and over criticizing and tearing yourself down and counting yourself out before you've even started speaking. And it is still something that I'm like, boy, I hope I have the right voice today, because that's the only one I got.
No, you're right. And it reminds me of the whole, Barbie monologue, which I think I remember going with my girls who are now 16 and 14, but, however many years ago, let's swipe 2 years off their ages. They didn't understand it.
Sure.
And
I still don't understand it.
But I think for women in our 40s or younger and older, I don't know how much younger, but, it hit us like, oh my Lord, that's exactly it. Like, I feel like the Exorcist. Sure. You're too thin, you're not thin enough. You're, like you said, too pretty, not pretty enough. You're too short, too tall, too this, too that. Nothing's ever good enough. And the battles we have to face on a daily basis are just exhausting and overwhelming. And I think we get to the point at a certain age where, like, I just don't care anymore. Like, I give up. I don't care. And then people are like, oh, well, the women have gone crazy. They're quitting. It's like,
yeah, be crazier, please. Not enough crazy. God, it's so true. It's so true. And so my law partner, Luke Jackson, phenomenal person. We work really, really, really well together. Major reason for it is he understands a lot of that. His wife is one of my closest friends. Luke's wife, Camille, and Luke and I, we all went to high school together. We graduated from Oakville together. We've known each other a long time. And we have, so I'll tell you kind of how this came about. And we have an understanding of there are some men in this profession, and I'm only speaking about this profession because it's what I know, and I'm speaking especially about women because that's what I know, like my own experiences, right? Guys have different challenges. The ones that I know look like this. I will talk to, let's just call him Bob. I'll talk to Bob, and Bob will say, I've been doing this for 35 years. You don't know what contracts are. You don't know what you're talking about. And your client's claims are ridiculous. Ridiculous. All right. Well, I thought there was some merit there, Bob, but thank you for the insight. Is there any particular thing that you want to point out? Is there any particular thing that you would like to disagree about? No. Everything you said is ridiculous. And so I'll walk next door to Luke's office. I'm like, Luke, you're going to have to talk to Bob. And it's that because there are so many times where Luke will get on the call, Luke will go talk to the judge, Luke will do these things, and the response is different. And that is so messed up. And it's not supposed to be that way. But for me, I work in a extremely conflict-ridden profession, right? I also have a toddler and a 4-year-old. And all day, every day, I am finding myself having to kind of run through mud to do things that are a whole lot simpler for other genders. And I do. I'm like, you know what, Bob, you're not getting my energy. If you want to make a point, if you want to tell me certain evidence that might support what you're saying, I'm here for it. I'm good at that. But if you just want to be an ass, you're going to have to talk to somebody else, because I know you're not going to do it over here. And that is how it works. And so earlier when we were talking about, conflict and is it comfortable or do I like it or any of those things, when it's my own stuff, when I'm going like, hey, I am not being heard. Now it's me who's not being heard. The first thing I do is I'm like, what support do I need? Because I've used all my words and I've got a lot of them, and it's still, the message is not getting across. My mother is extremely, extremely effective with my daughter, right? My daughter will listen to my mom like it's the first time she's ever heard this information, and Oma is the smartest woman on the planet, which she is, and we are just good to go. And mom did not say this for 15 times, like when I'm feeling that, where I'm just going, this isn't I'm not going to have a fight about your shoes. We're not doing it. We'll wait till Oma gets here. Oma, I'll talk to you about your shoes. There we go. The shoes go on, but I'm not spending 20 minutes on this. And so I know that I'm supposed to, or I think that a lot of people just find themselves being really, really critical about, this was a silly thing. I probably should have just handled it. Now here I am asking for help because I can't negotiate with a 4-year-old. I'm over it. I really am. There are this like rebalancing of priorities all day, every day. What's going to get my attention? What am I going to phone a friend for. That's the space that has been really interesting for this season of my life. With my firm, the ages that it's at, my daughter, the age that she is, my son, the age that he is. I'm like, I used to be a very, very, very high functioning, very capable grown up. And now I need a lot more support. And I think that's all right.
Yeah, it sounds like pick your battles, right?
Pick your battles.
Bang your head up against the wall and have to prove a point and make sure that everybody knows that you're right and they're wrong. And but at what cost?
Yes. Yeah. What cost? I mean, if the cost is me or my sanity or my sleep or my just enjoyment, enjoying, like December's coming up, right? And for the last, since 2019, so before COVID, I've either been pregnant, had 2020, or had a newborn, or had a toddler and a newborn. And so I was talking with my husband the other day, and I was like, I am really going to try to enjoy December. I would really like to have a good time this year. We have 2 trials, week-long trials that are both happening during the month of December. So the whole week of the 1st, the whole week of the 15th, those trials are really important to me. One of them is a civil rights trial, and the other one involves defamation and some underlying sexual assault. Like, I'm going to show up for those. I'm going to really show up for those. Those are going to get a lot of attention and a lot of energy. And then I think we're going to do like 2 light shows. We're going to try for, okay, here's this night that we're going to do this. Here's this night that's going to happen. We also have like a mediation and one other, I think, all day long event that's going to need attention during the month of December. And what that means is all of my other clients, of which I'm fortunate enough to have a lot, they're going to have to be told that this is a January problem. We're going to be circling back. We are going to circle back after the new year. And that's fine. That's just what has to happen, because I am not going to exhaust myself or sacrifice the time and excitement that I'm going to have with my friends or my family, especially the kids this year. I'm going to enjoy it because I want to and because I deserve to, and everything else is going to wait.
I sit here and I think, especially that part of the story, right? Like, we go back to 4-year-old, and you already know you want to be an attorney, to law clerking at 18, to, the experience in DC, which was amazing. Then Chicago and these law firms where the experience is not what you had hoped for, what fulfilled you, to sort of discovering and becoming and having the confidence to say, no, this is what I want. This is what I deserve. This is how I want to do it. And I have the confidence to do it and build it. And now to what you're saying, here are my boundaries, that I'm going to be clear with my clients. I'm going to be clear with the people that is not possible. We're not going to be able to get trial by December or the end of the year. That's not possible. We're going to be clarity on the outcomes. We're going to be open and honest communication, and clarity on how you want December to go. That evolution and that growth you've had, and I'm sitting here, you can tell me if I'm wrong, of what you want, and then really discovering who you are and becoming that through this transformation and evolution is, I don't know, pretty amazing. That confidence to say, nope, this is who Krystal is, and she's going to stand firm in that.
Oh, it sounds very cool when you put it that way. It's so messy, right? It's all like just extremely messy all the time. And it's like the best laid plans, of course, are still gonna go sideways. But I have gotten to a place where I get to think about it more in those terms. And that is, like, in my mind, that's the success of all of this. That's what I've been working towards, is being able to say, the problems that you're coming to me with are not problems that I'm going to deal with on this time frame, or they're not problems I'm going to deal with in that way. Or they're not problems that I'm going to adopt as my own, because I have my own and they deserve attention, right? And so like, one of the things that kind of comes to mind in all of this is the selfishness that I've seen from folks who have been in this profession for a long time, or from the folks that I've come up underneath. That's not the kind of selfishness that I want to have. And I don't know what the difference is. I don't want to display the kind of selfish behavior that is my needs, my wants, my stuff always comes first, because I don't think it's a good way to practice law. I am here and I will practice in this way, right? And maybe the distinction is just this: the people that want to work with the fellas that I'm thinking about, or that I grew up under, that's a different type of client. That's a different client than the ones that I want to attract, or the kind that I choose to work with. The client that wants the pit bull, that's probably one of my favorite analogies for all of this. I want a pit bull. Okay. First of all, pit bulls are actually like really docile until you abuse them. So maybe we should take that into account. The attack for the sake of the attack, the fight for the sake of the fight, all of that is that's not me. There are battles that are worth fighting. There are cases that are worth advocating for. There are people who have real causes who need advocacy and support and representation. And then there's bullies, and those aren't the people that I want to work with. And the coolest part about all of the stuff that we've been sort of pulling together here is that when I finally figured out I got to show up like me, and I need to speak like me and look like me and talk like me, and not try to imitate somebody else in this, the people that I wanted to attract that resonate with all of that are exactly the kinds of people that I attracted. And I put off a lot of people too, right? And that was for the best. But it definitely didn't feel like it at the time. It feels like, oh my God, especially because of some of the conditioning that we have. It's like, what if they don't like me? What if I am not likable? Which I think is maybe the real question there. Like, well, yeah, some people don't like this, or they don't want to work in this way, or they don't want to connect on this level, or they don't want something that I'm doing. And that's actually not like a personal failure.
100% that likable, air quotes, whatever we're taught, or that need at all costs, and needing to be something else to hit that likable quotient. What an exhausting thing.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And it is so true that, we hear authenticity, vulnerability, taking those masks off. Early on in our careers, we're just like, I'll do whatever, I'll be whoever, just to build that business. Yet we hear it time and time again. Eventually we're so exhausted, we let go, and we're like, I just got to be me. And that's when, as you said, the right things come your way. It just opens up. We let go. Yeah. We're no longer detached. We're abundant. Everything right comes your way. Yeah. And you talk about knowing who you are, being the you, right? A lot of the theme that we heard through today is fighting for others, being seen and heard. As you told your daughter, fair. I want people to play fair. The injustice, what are some of the outcomes or the things that you've seen play out through your 12 plus years?
Oh God. Okay. So for me, I very much wanted to go to law school to work in the civil rights space, and it took a long time before I could build a book of business in there, because it is expensive to gamble on cases where you don't know the outcome, right? We represent people on an hourly basis, but civil rights work, that's all contingent. So you really gotta roll the dice on some of these things, and it takes a long time to be a good enough gambler to know which ones. So those are always the most satisfying results for me. And the reason is this. when we are talking about people who have had their civil rights violated, it's always about some kind of immutable trait. So your color, your race, your national origin, gender, so something that has to do with who you are as a person, right? How you literally identify in the universe as an individual. And so violations of that inherently deal with these traits that are so sensitive to our personhood, your gender, your race, sometimes your age, right? And so a success in those arenas that's top notch for me. What that means is that you have to work with an individual. You have to work with a person who comes to you and says, having had their entire lived experience of, okay, I'm dealing with this ism now. I've never worked with an attorney before. I don't know if you can see me. I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if you'll believe me, because maybe this is all in my head. Maybe some of this, maybe I'm going crazy. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe this isn't what happened. Maybe I misinterpreted, you name it. And so just this year, we've had some really, really neat successes where we have been able to get a result. First woman that comes to mind for me, we brought a case based on racism. She was a Black woman. And part of the case for her, there's also some sexism involved and some sexual harassment, things like that. We brought a case for her, and the case was removed to federal court. We usually try to stay in state court because we're here in the Eighth Circuit, and civil rights cases are really challenging in the Eighth Circuit, more so than in the Seventh Circuit across the river, where I also practice. We don't have as friendly of laws or judges here. So if you're on the plaintiff side. So we got this result. Part of her case was she had to sit through a deposition, and this woman was terrified. So you sit in a conference room. There's 3 or 4 attorneys on the other side, a court reporter. You're being recorded the entire time. You have to speak into a microphone. You are being asked questions by an attorney. This particular attorney, she asked a question at one point, and she was trying to embarrass the client. And one of the questions she asked was, I'm just trying to figure out why somebody wouldn't pay their rent. And that's a quote. It's a verbatim thing that she said to my client, who was already embarrassed, who was already ashamed of the experience that she had, the fact that she had to complain about any of this, the fact that she had to hire an attorney. All of those things are more challenging than I think it is portrayed to be. Because again, you have to say, I was wronged. Something happened to me and it was wrong, right? And if you're used to dealing with a lot of this stuff, sometimes it's like, just move on. Just move on. You're not going to fix the world, right? Mm-hmm. So she sat through this deposition, and the whole time it's just demeaning, rude, disrespectful, and she was scared. She was so scared. So we do things like in those situations where I would stop and I'd say, we're going to take a break. We're going to take a break. We're going to talk. We're going to eat lunch. We're going to pause here. We're going to make sure that that we know that you're here. You're here, your story's here, your experience is what's on the table, and nothing that they can say about you being a bad person or, God forbid, not paying rent. All of these things. This woman had her driver's license suspended at one point, and that was brought up. We ended up getting a great result because she had enough confidence to sit there and share her story and talk about what had happened, even in the face of the most just demeaning, disrespectful kind of discourse in the form of questions that you can imagine. And it's subtle stuff, right? It's not always yelling. In fact, usually if you're yelling, you've probably lost. You probably you don't have good facts. You don't have stuff on your side. Elevate your argument here, not just your voice. But when that's the only option, that's what people do. And so we ended up resolving that case for a fantastic result. And she was in tears when we told her, this is the result. You did it. You did it. And that one just it stays in my heart. And it was so enjoyable to get a result that pretty life-changing stuff.
Especially for people probably who are used to not being seen and heard, and as you said, who are used to being treated a certain way. So
Oh yeah.
it's just another instance. Just get over it.
They had asked her at one point, she quit because she at some point she was actually assaulted at work, and so she ended up quitting. And the questions were all about how she couldn't hold a job. She was less valid. Her experience was less valid because she had gone from one job to another job to a different job. And the inherent thing in civil rights is that people are used to living in these marginalized spaces where they are not seen or heard, and they are, because of the isms that they deal with, they are already used to being talked down to. And so when she was saying, these things happen to me, they said, well, okay, but you didn't pay your rent and can't keep a job. Why would anybody care? And it's like these things are also connected, right? Like the privilege, the privileges that people come at these spaces with, the bubbles. It blows my mind. Blows my mind. So getting results in those spaces feels like such a bigger win because they've already suffered so much loss.
Yeah, and seeing what's on your website, what's on your LinkedIn page, so much of it is, well, a lot of what we talked about today on those pages, it's how you communicate, how you treat others, how you listen, whether it's the client, whether it's your team. And I was shocked to see even opposing counsel. And I thought just the vibe and the thread of all of it, which I already knew, but doing the podcast, we can get out to everybody else. The thread and the vibe of all of it is deep down into who you are internally as a person, your values, your passions, your, what really drives you as a person, which makes so much sense that you would sort of buck, we're going to call buck the institution.
Yes.
The courage, the bravery to say, no, we're going to do it differently. And we're going to serve a space that a type of law, a type of people that isn't being served. And we're going to create a space and do it our way and look at all the people that are coming to you.
It's pretty satisfying. And thank you. Thank you for saying that. And it's not a lot of moments where I get to sit down and think about, the ways that I've kind of shown up for myself in spite of all the training not to. And so it's fun. It's fun to be able to go, hey, I saw that this stuff wasn't really working for me. Maybe it wasn't really working for some other people. And then you get these cool results and, a lot of validation in that.
The courage to take a chance for and on yourself.
So many chances, yes.
And others are feeling it, they see it, and they'll come along with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a privilege. It really is. Feels good.
Well, thank you. I mean, we never know what we're going to hit on, but every time there's something that resonates with me that I've gone through myself, and certainly that is the case today. I know others will think so, and there will probably be others who are like, wow, that is the type of person that I want to be around, that I want to work with, or I know somebody who needs to work with their group or be a part of it in some form or fashion. So knowing that there are going to be people there, how do they find you and everyone in your group?
Okay, so our website, WeiglLaw.com. And
that's, let's spell it, because not everybody's going to know how to spell it.
That's true. It's usually misspelled. Weigl, WEIGL, law.com. Easiest email is probably info@WeiglLaw.com. Olivia is my sister who manages my schedule and does all of the things that make our law firm function. That's the person that'll probably be the first one to reach out.
And I know you're on LinkedIn.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I do always forget that I'm up there, but I am on there. It's Krystal Weigl on LinkedIn. And we have an Instagram page. That one's probably more fun and easier. It's just @Weigl Law on Insta.
Well, I appreciate you, again, trusting us, coming with us today and sharing so much deep information and background. It's a great story.
Oh, thank you.
I know it will help people out there because it's helped me today.
It is such a compliment to be on your show and to be able to chat with you. I always enjoy it so much. And thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for the conversation.
Thank you.
This concludes another episode of the She Lift Project podcast. To hear more episodes of the show, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And to learn more about our mission of helping women reach higher levels of success, visit sheliftproject.com and sign up to receive the latest news, ebooks, videos, and more.